One of the challenges I think we see in India is that private sector capacity expansion and investment is still lagging public sector. Last few years of growth has been driven by public investment. Partly, I think, because there's been a lot of focus on the fact that India has had extra capacity, demand wasn't there, and now last few years, it's a lot of catching up is happening. I'm going to request all of them, our business leaders in various sectors, to talk about how they see the shift going forward, what can be done to accelerate private sector's play in the economy, especially investment, both financial and direct, with examples of that, and maybe a 2 or 3 minute introduction from them. And since there's a lot of pent-up demand of questions, which I think has not been met. We'd like to take as many thoughts and questions from all of you in the coming few minutes. So maybe I'm going to begin with Mukesh. You've been a serial entrepreneur, and I think there are a few more companies in your belt which you're going to unleash on all of us over the next few years. Give us a sense of where, if you look at the excitement of private investment in India, what are the We've heard about the opportunities, but what can be done to accelerate it?
See, I will look at is it audible?
Yeah.
Okay. I will look at private investment more from VC PE lens, which is something I'm more familiar with. I moved back. Actually, I used to work here in Silicon Valley till 2007, and that's when I moved back to India. I'm pretty sure the total VC PE investment in the country at that time was probably less than $1 billion a year. It was a big deal to get even $500,000 seed check. Today, last 3 years in a row, the country has exceeded $60 billion of investment in startups, which has absolutely unleashed the startup ecosystem. I think Mr. Kant talked about tens of thousands of startups. Startup India has been a huge initiative. We have 120 odd unicorns, and I think that's nothing. I have visibility into the kind of entrepreneurs who are coming into now. And the ambition they have, today the Indian entrepreneurs think they can compete with anybody in the world. So I think, this $60 billion on average for the last 3 years is a massive step up compared to where we were 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure it will grow. I think the few things that are potentially holding it back are, still we haven't seen a lot of exits. Started to happen last few years. We have seen some, really good exit, lot more lined up. I think this year, next year are going to be super exciting. We have at least a dozen companies going public this year. So as investors see that exit, as they're able to rotate capital, it goes back, I think we'll see more acceleration. So I'm overall very bullish. I think as we get into this conversation, we'll talk about, what I think is going to happen. But I think just more exit, Mr. Kant also talked about the ease of doing business. I think it's getting better, but it can get a lot better. Regulators, a lot of sectors like financial services, needs to work closely with regulators. So how regulators engage with startups, especially when you're bringing foreign capital, investors are very cagey about how their investment will be treated. So some of the better clarity around those things will just help boost the ecosystem. But I'm very happy with the pace that we have seen in the last few years.
Thank you. Himanshu, from a perspective of small and medium enterprises, you work a lot with them. How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I'll have a slightly different opinion here. While I agree completely with Mukesh that the VCPE ecosystem has really evolved and it's moved very fast, but it tends to favor the real startups starting from the ground. What I am interacting a lot with is the historical small industrial business with 10, 15, 20 years in the same family-owned businesses wanting to scale up. And they are finding stuck. They don't know where to go. They're not a startup. They don't get attracted by the VCP who are looking for, 50%, 80% kind of return on their investment. Otherwise, they won't be interested in. Banks are not willing to lend them because banks look for collateral. They're not unwilling to take a position on them using, anything beyond collateral. And that also is very interesting because they take a very safe way of playing there. They may take a risk with a larger corporate, but not with a smaller one. They lack the leadership capability, which in my own small way, I've started to say that I make a difference to maybe 2 companies at a time, not much. But the financing piece is the challenge which they all face. no debt availability to them, and the only way is that if you can have a matching money coming in. To add to it, most of them suffered heavily during COVID. And being family owned and small businesses, they kind of dried up all their savings to survive through. So those who have survived, they just don't know how to scale up. That's the challenge which we see.
Is it also, Himanshu, that we talk about finance has been a perennial problem for most of the small and medium enterprises, and when we talk about digital transformation, which many legacy large companies are embarking on, because of perhaps lack of finance, the small and medium companies cannot even leverage the digital benefits. Is that also a challenge?
Not exactly. Many of them have leveraged in their own small cost way. So they may not go to a salesforce.com for the solution, but they would have their own, smaller homegrown solution which will work. So they are very adaptive and they are all very positive. That's the part. They all want to grow, they all want to scale up, but they get stuck somewhere in the maze of how to make it happen, apart from other challenges like processes and all. So I'm not talking about that, but they all want to invest. A little nudge from a policy or a banking setup or a financing setup can make a difference to this sector of the economy, which is about 30% of the economy we have.
So I'm assuming, Harshul, you don't have a challenge in finance, right? As Tech Mahindra, part of the Mahindra group, clearly you have a few billion to spare.
Do you want some?
Yeah.
We are doing a deal right here. So.
No, so I'm not an economist like you, Pranjal, but I can talk from the perspective of being a representative of corporate India in the US, having worked here for more than 20 years, having done cross-border M&A deals, having built a PNL and a US-India corridor around ecosystem build-out, so on and so forth. And more interestingly, the Mahindra Group, right, for the less initiated in the room, it was founded in 1945, just around the time India got independence. And if you look at the last 75, 80 years of its journey, it is very closely linked to the journey of India, right? The diverse sectors that Mahindra Group plays in, right, versus where India has grown, all the way from rural India to urban India, all the way from agri to high-end automotives. Yeah, Mahindra has been playing in variety of sectors. So we have been living the reality of India on a day-to-day basis, the good, the bad, the ugly over the last 75 years. But all I can say is there has never been a better time. There has never been a better time from our perspective in terms of investments. There has never been a better time in terms of how the world looks at India and companies like Mahindra. There are so many people, contrary to what Himanshu said, so many investors around the globe, FIIs around the globe, knocking on our doors, right? Wanting to come in and have a share of the pie. We're also seeing that Make in India, which started as a kind of a pipe dream to me 10 years ago, is now so real, right? We are the vehicles that we manufacture today in our plant, which is right off of Pune, it's called Chakan plant, one of the finest manufacturing plants in the world. We have had American automotive companies who have come and visited our Mahindra automotive plant, and they said we have nothing close to what you have, right? So the whole story is real. Whether it is cars, we are outselling most foreign cars in India today. If you look at the XUV 700, look at the Scorpio N, so on and so forth, it's a world-class SUVs, and we are about to release a bunch of pure electric, born electric SUVs coming in.
And you're looking at a global market. That's the other.
We are now. Actually, we do have a mid-size vehicle running in the Midwest. It's called the Roxor. It's an off-road vehicle. It primarily sells in the Midwest. Not many people know that we are the second largest by volume the tractor company in the United States. We have 800 dealerships in the United States, right? So the story about Indian companies going global and also attracting private investments back in India is real now.
But do you see any challenges in the growth and expansion plan of private sector in India? We talk a lot about automotive. Automotive has been able to create an ecosystem of vendors, and many of them have grown. But there are still this persistent and nagging doubts that how do we ensure and why is it that private sector, in fact, we've had several ministers and even the Prime Minister said that private sector in India should be more risk-taking. And private sector in India is still not looking at risk in the way that global investors do. What do you say about that?
Yeah, so I would say that the historical references probably are not necessarily going to augur the future well, because we are probably looking at a hockey stick kind of a growth when it comes to private investments in India. But India has to differentiate, right? And manufacturing is going to be key. Just last week, Anisha, our CEO, was actually with you, Avinash, at the ABP Network India Idea Summit that you guys did in India. So I'll just repeat what he said, that if by 2047, if India has to be a 35 trillion economy, I think manufacturing has to play a massive role. That's at 25% of the GDP of India has to come from manufacturing. I think it's today about 17, 18%. So that means that manufacturing has to scale by 16 times. Right? And it can't be that Eastern Asian model of manufacturing, the classic manufacturing. I think India needs to start thinking about investing in semiconductors, advanced technologies. And also say from a Tech Mahindra, the technology standpoint, which is where I'm more familiar with, artificial intelligence is where I think India needs to take a pole position. Right? I think if some of these things start falling in place, it will solve for a lot of things for India coming forward.
You know, the challenge of manufacturing, I'll come to you for that, Avinash, but challenge of, I spoke to a textile baron in India. For every subsequent plant that was set up by the group, the amount of people they hired was 30% lesser than the previous one, because there was far more automation and sophistication, as you said. So while, you know, investment is growing, but perhaps it's in manufacturing, we'll need more than that to look at the employment issue. And as I said earlier, I think we have to look at livelihood more than just employment. But Avinash, you know, media and entertainment sector is very fascinating in India, because it's perhaps the only sector where small media companies have been able to grow and become fairly big multi-million-dollar organizations. You don't see that in too many sectors. You know, companies which are small production houses have become networks. Existing media has expanded to multiple sectors. How bullish are you in the media sector at a time when everybody, you know, kind of wants to throw stones at you?
So those of you who don't know about my company, it's 100-year-old. It completed centenary last year. In 1922, my company started. I also the president of News Broadcaster Association, where the most news broadcasters started broadcasting in this century. There were hardly anyone before that who used to run.
But private news began in broadcast only
2000.
Years. Yep.
98, 2000
years ago.
Yeah, exactly. 2000, right? The thing is that everyone in across the world, Bollywood is our biggest export, right? It's one of the biggest cultural ambassadors. Our ambassador is no more here. She has left I think she's not in this audience right now. But Bollywood is the biggest export. It is the biggest cultural ambassador. And Bollywood is still not an industry status in this country. Now, the investment in the media business has been largely done by private sector.
So what does it mean? I mean, for the information of the audience, industry status for movie making, what does it imply positively?
So it allows you to access to the capital and private investments from venture capitalist firms or the large banks, that it is easily possible for this industry, which has not happened. Amitabh Bhai also knows it. He himself has lobbied it for long, but industry has not come together on these issues as to it is slightly over-regulated and slightly over-quarrelsome industry as
segmented
as media and entertainment sector is. The large amount of expansion of this industry has happened because of the private sector investments. And it will continue to do so, but unfortunately, we have not been able to create a Disney in India. And we have a long way to go. But I can tell you, Indian entrepreneurs and Indian businessmen who are into media entertainment sector have huge potential. You have seen original formats coming in television, which has come from India. More and more Indian companies are experimenting. I mean, Satyameva Jayate, for example, when Star Plus did it, it was an original format on a entertainment channel show. Dance India Dance, which was done on entertainment channel, was an original format show which was designed in India, and these are now becoming international franchise. So slowly we are moving in direction where we can become where we expand globally and then invite private investments from firms like them, but
Avinash, what is fascinating today is if you look at the streaming model, what Netflix actually has pioneered. Fascinatingly, I think there are similar competing streaming services in 25 different languages in the country. So that shows a certain vibrancy, isn't it?
So I'll tell you, you have to give it to the Indian entrepreneur. The community of Indian filmmakers and content producers are very enterprising. The private investments is not happening in their production. Private investments are happening in the technology company, who are distributor, like InShots, aggregators. Today, the media entertainment sector is fighting a battle with Google in India, right? Because they have become the biggest distributor of the content. So all the investment that is going right now, even in the cable distribution sector, which is largely controlled by the foreign investments and private investments in India and private equity investments in India. But the content making, which is the core of the business, has not received so much of private investment in India from banks and private sectors.
So you want more formal institutions to enter that. Mukesh, we heard from Himanshu. So you said things are looking good. There are a lot of opportunities. He's saying we still need some money. So why is there this mismatch between those who are looking for money and investment and those who have the money but perhaps are not looking at it?
Yeah, I guess there are different types of opportunity and the risk-reward profile. So I think what I was talking about, the VCP industry, which is by definition has a very high risk appetite. And of course, return expectations are also equally high. So you need to have ideas which have significant scale potential. Most of the, again, the startup world I'm part of, when people evaluate business plan, they look at, can this go to $100 million revenue in 5 to 7 year period? That's an insane amount of scale. Now, only 1 out of 10 company will get there, other 8 or 9 not. But the return from that one is going to justify the potential write-off or less than desired return on the balance of the portfolio. I think small and medium businesses have a very different growth profile. You may grow with capital in maybe 20-25%, but you don't have that kind of hockey stick growth possible, and hence they are not attractive from VCP point of view, and hence that's where structured credit
attractive
and
from a PE point of view. Maybe a mid-cap PE would be not VC.
No, but PE requires size. So you can't be a small business, let's say doing $5 million revenue and attract PE capital. Right?
5 million, no. But
right. So, but a lot of small and medium business will be in that range.
I used to work for Diversity, which was owned by Bain Capital. So I'm aware of the kind of expectation the private equity player would have. And most of the businesses I am talking about are not in that profile. They are more like run-of-the-mill old businesses, which...
Himanshu, I need a solution.
Maybe I just want to add just one more thing, clarify. See, again, in the VC world also, people start calling these lifestyle businesses. So the entrepreneur who has, let's say, 20 crore business,
right,
and it can still growing 20-25%, but no one really wants to invest because this will not become 500 crore business. So this person is kind of stuck, even if they has an ambition. But I think the challenge is for this entrepreneur to figure out how can I pivot to create the scale trajectory if really want to attract.
If you can, what you said is the right way, no doubt. If you talk of a solution, I think the debate is that if the banks can start looking, or if there's a nudge to the banks, to start looking at these businesses like they look at a bigger corporate business, where you fund the financials of the company on the basis, not just looking at a collateral and reducing the value by 50% before funding it. That's the way you manage your risk. Start being a little more positive about it. I think things will change.
Great. I want to get some thoughts from all of you. We have about 15-20 minutes left. So all the questions which were not answered, not the other panels, only for this panel, please. But happy to look at that. And if you want to talk about the presentation I made, I'm also happy to answer that. So can we get some mics here? Mr. Das here.
The person already says, don't tell me about Tatas and Mahindras. I know they are, but beyond that, give me names of companies. So the point is, what's dogging foreign direct investment or in smaller companies or in even growing large companies is this image of what Baiju has done,
Perfect. So we got that. Let me get one more question. The lady over there, please, and then Shaji. That's a very good point, Mr. Das. I think corporate governance and generally governance is a thing which we need to work on. Yes, please. Please introduce yourself too.
I'm Priyanka. I'm a student at Stanford Graduate School of Business. And two things. One, adding to Mr. Dutt and to what we discussed in the panel. A simple insight. If you look at United States, there are thousands of Thai restaurants. And there's a reason. In 2002, the government of Thailand explicitly gave a lot of incentives, financial incentives, and a lot of other benefits to Thai chefs to go ahead and open their restaurants around the world. The reason you see we have thousands of Thai restaurants here in the United States today. I think this is what government of India also requires, and not just government of India, but
You must be
private
missing
companies.
Indian food over here, right?
I'm a handlooms person. I want to change the narrative of the world about how we sell about
You're
unsustainable
suggesting a
fabrics.
similar scheme for India to get Indian chefs or other professionals.
That is one. Also, we have a negative equity. We don't know how exactly to market our products and sell our stories. And I think that needs to change.
Great points. Asha?
Yeah. My question is for
Mike, please. Right here. I'll come to you in a minute. Let me come back to the panel. Yeah.
Okay, so my question was actually to Avinash about, you mentioned that that Bollywood still doesn't have an industry status in the US. I still didn't fully get it, but can you give us an example of something else that has got an industry standard in the US?
No, not in
about the
US.
US,
I'm
right?
talking about India.
In
You know,
India.
Bollywood is an
Movie making as an
is
industry, movie making as an activity is not considered an industry in the government rules, which means that banks cannot invest, put their money because it's not classified as an industry.
Is there any effort to tackle that?
No, so there is a lot of this discussion has been happening since Sushma Swaraj was our NBDA minister, and she tried hard to get it done. But there are differences on how, because this is a very informal sector. There are gig workers, people come and work for a movie. The point that I'm making is that look, there is a huge opportunity in India for a private investment in content creation business. But what is happening is that the investment is going into content aggregator business and not in the creation business. And unless you don't fund the creation business, the aggregator business will not go very far. And there is an opportunity there. And largely it is funded by the Indian entrepreneurs who are homegrown entrepreneurs who have taken a risk and started producing movies, launched TV news channels and TV entertainment channels, do theaters and all that. But it requires, and the problem with the private equity is this, that they want multiples, very short time. And content making business does not do like that. It has an impact on the society. It works there is a social contract that what business we are in. And that is not supported by the private equity business. And that is where there's disconnect.
Okay, I think we should have had more P guys here on the panel, but Mukesh, for the moment, we'll have to do with you. So could you also address the governance issue? Because we see that while we have more than 100 unicorns, we also see a cloud over some of them, right? So, and while startups have energized with dynamism the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem, some of these issues are tarnishing them.
Well, the good news, cloud has only one name, Baiju. So I think it's one black sheep situation. See, I was part of, Myntra Flipkart ecosystem, and when Walmart bought Flipkart, investors, made $20 billion. The amount of coverage that Flipkart has gotten compared to Baiju is not even, anywhere close to this.
Let's not discuss Baiju. Let's talk about the issue at hand that the Indian industry does not have that image of high corporate governance, and I think I'd rather stick to that.
Sure.
Fair enough. Fair
I think maybe, and again, Indian industry has a lot of different parts. I think the one that I'm familiar with, this broader startup ecosystem, I can talk about that. I think first of all, startup ecosystem is fairly new. It's only about last 15 years. We have seen all these companies emerge. So I think certain, well-established corporate governance practice have not necessarily got in. Now, a lot of these companies are going public. Many have gone public. So they are bringing a lot of independent board members. The SEBI scrutiny of these companies is extremely high. So I think that is also bringing a next level of vigilance. I think if I look at, just larger, again, startup ecosystem, there have been few isolated incidents, and there's not one company, there's smaller companies as well. But by and large, I don't think, from my vantage point, I have not seen systematic issue. But then there is a other more traditional business. Maybe somebody else on the panel can, take that, I'm not familiar with
What I can say, Mr. Das, as you also live in India, I think our regulatory system is becoming far more aggressive. And we see a lot of these things. And if you look at what's happened at Paytm, the way Reserve Bank of India has questioned and asked them to take charge of the situation, they are good examples. But I think the point is that there are some questions which need to be addressed on that.
I think what he mentioned about is the image point. And the image building will take its own time once you continue doing these things for a period of time.
But I think IBC would have also contributed to the fact that, you do not just skim the bank, scam the system. So I think those issues are being addressed. I saw a question on the side over there. Let me collect 2 questions and come to you. Yeah, I'll come to all 4 of you. Yes, sir.
Yes, still private investment, but a bit of a different angle here. That if any of you care to comment on ways of just harnessing private investments to augment fiscal capacity of the state for infrastructure, for example, instruments like INVITs or investment infrastructure trusts that have been used for highways, railways, and ports, as well as other means of value capture to recycle the wealth generated through those investments.
So basically, what are the new models of investment for infrastructure?
How's their uptake, and to what extent do you see those?
That's going to take a long time to answer, but I'll try to get some of you to answer that. Yes, sir, over here, 2 over there, and
I think I want to go back to Surucha's comment. I think you guys missed the point that you're trying to make. I think it's a more cultural point. It's not about more regulation or regulatory framework that ensures better governance. Because, compared to here the startup ecosystem is completely unregulated. In India, you have to file every quarter with the ROC or there's NCLT. There's lots of regulatory guardrails. Despite that, you have a cultural problem with transparency and integrity of the financials. And I think if I can just, maybe I'm putting words in Mr. Gurucharan's question. The issue is more fundamental. It's not regulatory. It is really cultural. How do you ensure that the Indian entrepreneur, really shrivels at the thought of having 2 books? You could argue Baiju is a flash in the pan in the negative, but there are many companies that systematically maintain 2 books.
So how do you explain Enron then?
Sorry?
In America, this happened.
Well, a false analogy doesn't make it justifiable, right?
No, I'm not justifying that.
Let us not justify. I agree with both Gurucharan and what Sriram is saying. I think the issue is real. I mean, we ourselves acquired Satyam, right? In 2009, the company that came under a cloud in a very big way, publicly listed company. Usually, but since then, I think, particularly taking the Satyam example itself, SEBI has regulated a lot. Right? So publicly listed companies, it's very hard to find flaws with them now. But I think the question is more around the private sector. Right? And how do you...
I think I was just making was culturally, do you guys see this as an issue? And if so, are there any mechanisms, not from a regulatory standpoint, what are the mechanisms by which...
So how do we have a culture of ethical behavior?
Exactly.
Right? So quickly from you, I want to move on to another issue. Quick answer from you.
My only viewpoint is that I've managed large number of countries across Asia, APAC. I have been a part of a global corporation, Diversity, and sat in the head office looking at global issues. I'll not agree with the concept that it's cultural to India. I think these kind of people exist everywhere in the world, and you see where you are familiar with. So you see frauds in Philippines, you see them in China, and they're more there than here. So the issue is real. I don't disagree with that. But the answer to me is better regulation and enhancing or encouraging the right behavior and slapping the wrong behavior. Over time, things will change. That's my view.
I think we also have identified a very good
one point I'll only want to make on his question and Gurucharan's question is that look at our country. It is not even 30-year-old capitalism. If I look at it, 1990s we started the reform. So largely all the companies that you see, including the Satyam that was mentioned, was launched in 1990s, right? And there was a culture that chalta hai. We can manage it. Now when the regulatory things are tightening up, you will start seeing these more and more expose happening. Just now, there is a massive merger deal got demerged because of these regulatory highlights, saying that there are something not right with the books of the companies that are going to merge in media entertainment sector, which is a highlight as to how a good behavior will get rewarded and a bad behavior is likely to get very badly punished. So there are exposure right now happening in the Indian market. We are a very immature, young capitalist country, if I may say so.
Good point.
And just want to add that I think I think I will not at all characterize this as a cultural issue or take it for granted that most companies are in the habit of maintaining two books. I think that is a gross exaggeration. I think I'm personally part of dozens of startups. The VC firms I work with, they work with hundreds of startups. And I think there are issues here and there, and there are bad actors in all systems. But I think a little bit of, we cannot get carried away and just say it's something wrong with us, either culturally or in the ecosystem.
I think what we can say, we have a great topic for next year's discussion. So Richard and Amit, we need to have a panel on this theme next year. So there are 2 or 3 hands at the back, so I'll go to those 2 gentlemen and the lady here.
My name is Ravi Mistry.
Yes, sir, please go ahead, they'll boost it.
Please go ahead, the microphone is on.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can.
The question is for Harshul. Since Mahindra deals with a lot of small vendors, hopefully for the products that they're making, if these vendors need capital to grow so they can also help you with your growing production, would you be investing in these companies?
Okay, I'll come to that because that's a larger question also, the relationship between large companies and the vendor ecosystem. There was another hand next to you. Yes, go ahead. Please raise your hand. The lady can't see you. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Ankit. I'm from Stanford Business School. Question is for Harshul.
Okay, he can't monopolize everything, but go ahead.
I come from automotive background for 10 years, so I'm biased with my question here. But similar to him, but my question is about 3 sectors I'm interested in: autonomous vehicles, agriculture vehicles, and urban mobility. And I've tried to explore, ideas in all these to do something in these areas. But every time I've looked in, these sectors in India, I found out these 100-year-old companies kind of, just
Don't say that in a bad way. Say it in a good way.
Amazing. So I should start with this. My dad owns an XUV 700, and I'm a big fan. I have a X3 here, but I like XUV 700 better. So big fan of Mahindra. But how is Mahindra supporting these? What's the vision to support small companies, the startups in India?
Good question. Bhavya, mic for her, please.
Hi, I'm Bhavya. So my question is actually to you, Pranjal. You said informal is the new formal sector in your presentation. Why do you say that? Because increasingly we are seeing more and more conversation around minimum wages, etc. So just a little bit of insight.
Around what?
Around minimum wages.
Okay.
So
okay, I'll answer
why
that.
do you say that? Yeah.
But let's go to the monopoly player first.
So I'll answer both the questions together. I think the first one was, do we invest in our suppliers? If it makes strategic sense, if it makes business sense and there's a strategic ROI coming out of it, and if there is a backward integration play for us, and if we want to play in the area that the vendor is in, why not? I mean, we have done it in the past. Typically, we take majority stake. We don't believe in taking minority stakes. And coming to your question on startups, we engage a lot with them. We have a separate division which focuses on new age technologies and startups, particularly in EVs and autonomous. So both in Silicon Valley, we keep an eye out. So I, in some sense, also lead the Silicon Valley outpost for the company and also all the startups in India. So on an average, we probably talk to 10 to 15 startups just in our auto business per month. So I don't know where you got stuck, but you can talk to me offline and I'll help you open doors.
Great. So on the question of informal versus formal, my sense is that we cannot create enough jobs. The jobs, if you look at even the national policy of maximum governance, minimum government, means that government jobs will not grow. Therefore, you see a mismatch between aspirations and applications. How do we create livelihoods? I think that's where the framework lies. So today, there's not a lot of policy regulation around how to give social security, financial security to the gig workers. If you look at the ride-hailing platforms, so those drivers are demanding some kind of security. They're also demanding some kind of minimum income for themselves. So for example, they say, don't take 30% of my earning, take maybe 15% of my daily earning. So this is where I think regulatory interventions can kind of help. But Amitabh, if you want to come in on this one, please. Okay, he's shaking his head. But my sense is that we will have to look at it because job creation will not keep pace in the classic employment. 9-to-5 job will not keep pace with, but livelihood creation is a fantastic opportunity. In fact, what Himanshu represents, the media industry which Avinash represents, and the companies that he's investing in, for example, a chain of gyms that you have, they don't have jobs classics, right? I would assume the gym trainers are not employees. They are partners with the gym companies. Now, if you have 10 million gym trainers who are getting a livelihood because there's formalization of the business, but not of the employment, I would say that there is where the hope lies. Do you want to add to this, Mukesh?
Yeah, I think, if you look at some of the other industries like, the food delivery, employs, I think, close to 500,000 delivery, partners. Now, these are gig workers. I think most of them on average earn about 25,000-30,000 rupees a month, which is pretty decent income. And a lot of flexibility they can choose. They can work longer hours some day, lesser hours some days. I think some more benefit can potentially come in, but these jobs didn't exist. So these were, similarly, Ola and Uber, together have created, over 1 million jobs. A lot more income for the auto drivers and so on.
You don't call it job. I mean, it's not a job.
It's
right?
livelihood. I think it's a better term.
So there's something called the app economy, which is supposed to be the key force for making sure people have a livelihood.
Right. It's a gig economy is the French.
Absolutely. We have the lady over there, Rajat, and the two ladies at the back. Rajat, can we begin with Rajat, please? Yeah, you have the mic, so.
Question. I just had a comment because I don't want to sound presumptuous, but Mr. Gursharan Das's question is extremely important.
Okay.
And I just had a comment, very quick comment, which is that...
I hope, Mr. Das, you have not created a cartel of questions, right? No. That's a governance issue.
It's a comment on corporate governance. India and the rest of the world. I mean, India doesn't have a monopoly on corruption. I mean, that's clear, right? Corruption happens everywhere, sometimes more, sometimes less. The global financial crisis that emerged in the United States was a crisis as much of regulation, I think, as much of enforcement. I think where India lacks is in good, consistent, efficient enforcement, so that people then feel that they can get away with it. So even before ex ante, they will take decisions knowing that the system will not be responsive. And I think enforcement is the key, really.
That's right.
Can I, 1A?
Okay, you grab the mic. Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I disagree. I don't think we should try and ask questions like, is it culture?
Right.
Because culture we know. I mean, the same guy who doesn't pay his taxes and doesn't stop at the red light, spits on the ground, when he crosses the immigration line at Heathrow Airport, starts doing immediately all those things after an 8-hour flight. So culture is a matter of centuries. So it is related to governance and enforcement. The problem with why we are suspicious of getting the government into it is because the government has done singularly bad job. We are still an over-regulated economy, but those regulations are counterproductive or they are negative. So that is really, I mean, that's where I
think this is a great insight. I think maybe regulation and structure needs to change. Mr. Kant, you want to come in on this? Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Right here. We are staying with the front row.
my view on this is that there can't be excessive degree of regulation. If you want India to grow at high rates, and there is a need for self-regulation.
That's right.
There's a need for better corporate governance by startups and individual companies. Companies and startups must adhere to self-regulating ecosystem, and that requires a behavioral change. There has to be a governance framework designed to establish a culture of accountability, transparency, and ethical behavior. Everything can't be done by government.
Absolutely.
And the more regulation you bring in, the more this thing you'll stifle innovation. It will be very inappropriate.
Very well said, sir.
That's it. So, Mr. Khan, can I just request you to answer one question on the new models for investing in infrastructure? 1 minute short response. You know, the question was that what are the new ways in which money is being spent and invested in infrastructure sectors? Are there new models being considered, and how have they panned out?
A lot of work, actually a lot of this thing, India has done private sector investment was not coming in. So instead of that, government has put in a lot of resources, but government believes that government is good at creating infrastructure, but not good at operating infrastructure. It's not good at maintaining or operating infrastructure, so it has come out with a number of new models. REITs, InvITs, asset monetization. It has sold out a lot of assets in the last few years, especially in the road expressway sectors. All assets being created are being put out through a transparent, competitive bidding process. InvITs, REITs have become a regular process where even private sector, the infrastructure that they're creating, they're bringing in InvITs and REITs. So India's seen a huge innovation in infrastructure sector.
HAM and other such models have also been very good. Thank you so much. So, two ladies at the back, and then we're going to close because we need to end the session. Kindly do introduce yourself. Thank you.
My name is Lindsay, and I'm the CEO of a nanotechnology startup in the United States, and I've been looking at setting up a branch in India, which is one of the...
Sorry, what technology?
Nanotechnology.
Okay, super.
We work on diamonds and precious metals, so India is a massive market for this kind of thing. And to bring it back to corporate governance and regulation, isn't it more about the court system that's the challenge? Because it's about what happens if there is a disagreement. It's not that
Dispute
there's more
resolution.
corruption.
You are saying enforcement of contract is a problem?
No, I think that's a question. So please let her complete. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Right. So my question is, what is your perspective on that? Because I've spoken to multiple legal counsels in India, and they've all told me that if there's a disagreement, there's really nothing that can be done about it. And that's a little scary as somebody who's
Fair
looking
point.
to
It's
set
a
up
very good
business.
question. I'll go to the other lady, and then we come back for a quick response. A lot of these questions will have to be answered, you know, in the interactions through the day today and tomorrow. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Aarti, and this question is to all the panelists. As you know, Open Networks is coming up, ONDC. What do you see as opportunities and how do you see challenges there? Because that's we did some experiments with Kochi Metro, there were some experiments in Bangalore, and I think that's what the future is, because we are moving towards energy reliance where Open Networks can play a very, very important role. The same is with
That's a great thought. Oh, I'm going to come to Mukesh for that because there's nobody better than him to look at that. But I'm going to request all of you, Himanshu, and then you to quickly respond on dispute resolution, conflict. How do you see that panning out? Quickly, an answer from you.
I would say it's not hopeless, as your lawyer sounded to you. But yes, it's a challenge getting a clear court verdict in time. Now, the only thing which I believe is that in India, it still matters when you're choosing your partners anywhere to look at the context, look at the, it's not just a legal contract which runs the conduct of two organizations. It's the body language, the personality, and a lot of other things, which is true for most of Asia. When you do business in Japan or China, you deal with individuals, you get comfortable with each other, feeling and start trusting, and then you do business. It's not to that extent, but an element of that is found in most Indian dealings. You need to be able to trust the person before you start dealing with it.
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
So, Harshul, quick.
Both are a challenge, I agree with you at this point.
30 seconds from you, Harshul.
Yeah, no, I don't have a perspective which is too different from him. So.
Okay, so more of the same. Avinash, you were saying whether contract enforcement.
No, she asked a question.
I'm asking you, in your sector, for example, how good or bad is it?
I think in my sector, one of the things that works very well, and what Amitabh also said just now, is that the government is not so much interfering in our business. Because if you look at our sector, largely it is done by the private sector. There is only one company which Government of India runs called Doordarshan or Prasar Bharati. 99% of the business is still done by the private sector. And it is done on the mutual trust. There are producers, there are story writers, screenplayers. They all sign contract with each other. And there are multinational companies like Disney. You have got Amazon movies, Netflix. They're all working in India. And I can tell you one of my company deals with them, and it is absolutely perfect. There's no problem of enforcement of contract. Yes, but you have to, when they see, I'll also make a point. Somebody mentioned about Thailand chefs and all that, etc. And there is just a news right now that the European Union is going to sue the Build Your Dreams company because they are being subsidized by the Chinese government. When you come and deal in India, India is a democracy. When you go and deal in China or in Thailand, they are either not democracy or quasi-democracy, right? So things that you get done there is not similar that the way you get done in India. At least you know what are the processes, and those processes are transparent. You may or may not like those processes, but finally those processes works over a longer period of time, and it's transparent for everyone.
Thank you. Yes, quickly, Arun. Can we have a mic for Arun, please?
Arun, sir, you don't have a question to me, right?
A quick comment from you, yeah.
Brush this under the carpet. This is a very big issue. Like the big progress is made in general ease of doing business processes or the IBP breakthrough. You need a breakthrough in dispute resolution. In India's democracy, and so is the US. Compare the US legal system and the dispute resolution system in the US to India. Day and night. So I don't think we should sit back and say it's all okay.
Not all.
It needs to be cracked. I think it's important that everybody addresses it. There are ways to do it. People know how to do it. It's not like people don't know how to do it. And once the kind of government gets around to doing it, it'll be a big deal. And I think it should be done.
Thanks, Arun. A quick one on ONDC, Mukesh, and then we end.
Yeah, ONDC, I think it's a continued evolution of India's stack or digital public infrastructure. I think it has done incredible job on variety of sectors. I think e-commerce is something which used to be very capital intensive. Only few companies had kind of built, benefited from the network effect, and the smaller retailers were being left out. But ONDC, really levels a playing field. It's anyone can list their inventory on ONDC and get access to demand across all the platforms. It's still early, but I think I'm very optimistic about the future of ONDC. And I think this digital public infrastructure is continuing to go from strength to strength. Creating this inclusive environment for small businesses and individuals across all sectors. So I think let's watch ONDC with a lot of interest in the coming years. And I think if we are able to include long tail of retailers and smaller manufacturers on the ONDC backbone, I think it will do great for overall growth of retail in the country.
I think the success of a good panel discussion is that 5 new topics have come out of this. So Amit and Richard, again, I think from culture to corporate governance to branding to reputation to dispute resolution to the informal economy, I think there's so much more to unpack. And, there is a huge set of changes happening in India simultaneously. Not everything is going to work as planned, but the fact is that India is perhaps one of the most dynamic countries and with a multi-dimensional transformation taking place. But please join me in thanking the panel for this wonderful discussion.